Controversial legislation to ease restrictions on late-term abortions is at the center of a fierce nationwide debate. New York passing a sweeping law allowing abortions up until the baby's due date. Democrat lawmakers in Virginia under fire for comments surrounding a similar bill pushing post-birth abortion or infanticide. Lawmakers in Vermont and Rhode Island also pushing radical bills. While the legal lines between abortion rights and restrictions continue to blur, I am joined by 3 abortion survivors who are here to share their amazing, incredible personal stories. We have Melissa Oden, who is on the end, founder of the Abortion Survivors Network. We have Josiah Presley in the middle, and then Claire Colwell over here sitting next to me. We've been talking during the commercial break. Their stories are just phenomenal. We'll start on the end. If you'll just tell us what happened, how you found out about your life story.
I was actually 14 when I found out my story. I'm adopted, have been blessed with an amazing family. Knew I had been born prematurely, but yeah, here I was 14 years old to have my own adoptive mother tell me, you know, Missy, you survived an abortion. It was absolutely devastating.
And then you found your mom later. And
yes, it's been a lifelong journey. I started looking for my birth mother when I was 19, didn't find her until I was almost 30.
And she didn't know you survived?
She didn't.
How is that possible?
She was told that day, it's a monster, it's hideous, don't look at it. She didn't know if it had been a little boy or a little girl delivered in that final step of the saline infusion abortion. And she had lived with such incredible regret, as you can imagine. So I've been blessed to be united with her. We first started communicating about 6 years ago, and now she's one of the greatest supports alongside my family.
Wow, that's incredible. Josiah, tell us your story.
Yeah, so I was adopted from South Korea into a family of 12 kids. And when I was 13, my adopted parents, they sat me down and they told me about how my birth mother actually had a curettage abortion when she was 2 months pregnant with me. And a curettage abortion is a type of abortion where the doctor goes into the mother's womb and basically rips the baby apart and brings them out in pieces. And that's actually why we think I'm probably missing an arm today. And so she had the procedure at 2 months, and then at 5 months realized that I was still alive, that the abortion had failed. And at that point, I was born later on October 7th, 1995, and I was placed with an adoption agency and lived in a foster home for about a year before I came over to the States to live with the family I've grown up with.
Wow. Now, Claire, your mother had an abortion, but you survived. How is that possible?
I did. So my birth mother was 13 years old when she found out she was pregnant with me. She was in 8th grade, and her mother said that she wasn't ready to be a mother, and so she took her to a local abortion clinic, and she had a DNC surgical late-term abortion at 5 months along in her pregnancy, and they told her that her life would go back to normal, but a few weeks went by and things weren't getting back to normal, and she went back and they told her that her abortion had been successful, but that she was still pregnant, and one of the twins that she didn't know she was pregnant with had survived. And so she actually sought out a second late-term abortion in Kansas, but because of the risk of infection, they weren't able to do that, and so I was born 6 weeks later.
And you also have met your biological mother.
I did. I actually didn't find this out until I met my biological mother. I had a lot of physical complications growing up. I was in body casts for 2 years because I had dislocated hips and club feet from the abortion procedure, and we didn't know why until I met my birth mother and found out about her abortion.
I want to play a soundbite. You probably all heard it. The governor of Virginia. Listen to this.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
So, Josiah, if your mother lived in Virginia and you were born and she didn't want you and she tried to have an abortion, she still could decide to take your life after birth. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's really sad to hear that, but it's not surprising to hear that when we live in a country that has arbitrary criteria for what defines personhood. And so abortion, it's legal in the first trimester, the second trimester. I mean, the next step is, why not the third trimester? Why not right after they're born? And so this brings to mind, this reminds us just the reality that people are people at conception, and that we should care about their personhood then at conception, not after they're born. because this is what we're left with
Yeah.
when we have those kind of arbitrary criteria for personhood.
Yeah, as I look at all of you, just thanking God that he spared your lives. When you watch the women cheer behind Andrew Cuomo in New York when he signs the legislation that you can have an abortion up until the very last second, and you see the World Trade Center lit up in pink, what's your reaction?
It's shocking to me that people no longer in our country care about what is true and right. We know that a baby is what is in the side of the mother's womb based on medical technology and science. And so we just hope that, you know, because people can see our faces and see that we are people, we are human, we do grow up to be someone someday, that people will realize that those women do not speak for women like me. And so I would ask those people, where were my rights as a woman? What were my rights in the womb?
Melissa, you were not supposed to live. And here you are living. You're a public speaker, and you go out and you give life and redemption to a lot of women all over the country. What's your message to people who are having to make a decision? And what's your message to those governors that have signed this legislation?
For those governors, I would say, kind of echoing Claire's sentiments, you know, this is a human rights issue. And in a world that decries women's rights, where were Claire's rights? Where were mine? Where are the rights of those little girls who are going to have their lives ended by abortion today? Without the right to life, there is no other right that comes. And for someone who's facing that decision about an abortion, I want people to know that they're not alone. So many women are coerced, forced, don't know what resources exist for them in their communities. Maybe are completely unsupported. And so I want women to know there are resources available in every community. They can always contact any of us. You're never alone.
You know, I love to honor the parents that adopted all three of you, and all of my friends that, you know, anyone who's adopted a child. I have a friend who adopted a little girl, and she said, I hate it when people say I'm the adoptive parent. I want to be the parent. She does have a biological parent, but I am the mom. So tell us your story about your adoptive, about your parents. I'm making the same mistake. Jose, I'll start with you. Tell us about the family that brought you into their home.
Yeah, so I'm actually the son of a pastor of worship at a Southern Baptist church in Oklahoma. And so my parents, they have 12 kids, but they've adopted 10 of us. And what has caused them to adopt us is the gospel, the fact that they've been changed by God to love others, and his work in their life then causes them to love those around them, and then gives them the pro-life conviction to then want to take in these children and make us their own. Just as God has made them his children, they make us their children.
Claire, how about yours?
I was adopted by a couple that weren't able to have children naturally, and so I also have a sister who's adopted, and they just said that when they went to the doctors, there was a 1% chance of them having children naturally, and so they knew that the other way to have children was through adoption, and so God created our family, and I owe my parents so much credit for the way I was able to respond to my birth mother when she told me, because they raised me on love and grace and forgiveness. And so all three of us have forgiven our birth mothers because we know that they had no idea what they were getting into when they had an abortion. And so there is so much hope and healing after abortion.
Yeah, it's not about condemnation. It's just, when we hear your stories, it's just amazing how God has huge plans for all of y'all when you weren't even supposed to be here. It's incredible. And we'll end this with your story about your parents.
Yeah, my mom and dad were a lot like Claire, so my parents struggled with infertility for about 15 years. They were foster parents. They adopted my older sister from another family, and then they adopted me no matter what they were told my life was going to look like, that I might not live for long, that I might face multiple disabilities.
And look at you. You're perfect.
That's the power of love.
Yeah,
that's what I like to tell people, right? This is what love does. It saves lives. It brings us to life. And after 15 years of infertility, my parents had a biological child of their own.
Wow. Wow. I hear that a lot. Our assistant here, her parents were told they couldn't have kids. They went down to South Carolina, adopted a child. She found out on that trip that she was pregnant with twins. 3 little ones all at once. So it's pretty cool. And today is her birthday, and she's right over there. We love you, Elizabeth. Okay, thank y'all all so much. Powerful stories. And because God spared your lives, there are 5 kids in between y'all. You haven't had children yet, but you have 2, you have 3, and then Missy, you have 2. So it's awesome. God bless you.
All right, last night, President Trump struck another nerve with an issue that has divided those on the right and some on the left. Watch.
To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb. Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life.
This comes after New York State passed a bill loosening restrictions on late-term abortion, and a similar bill is being considered in the Virginia legislature. So was the State of the Union the time and place to call for a ban like this? Joining me now, American Majority CEO and former presidential speechwriter for George W. Bush, Ned Ryan, is here, along with his partner in crime from the other side, Fox News contributor and host of The Richard Fowler Show. It is Richard Fowler. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Good to see you, Kennedy.
All right, so, you know, Ned, this isn't about reproductive rights and empowerment and a woman's agency over her own body when you are talking essentially about infanticide.
Well, I would go a step further, Kennedy. I think infanticide is a very nice way to say murder. You're killing viable human beings. I know this for a fact. My daughter was born at 24 weeks. She was 1 pound, 7 ounces, 12 inches long. When she was born, she was a human being that was viable outside of the womb. She wanted to live. And this issue to me, I can't even believe we're having this debate, Kennedy, that we allow this practice in our country, at New York, Virginia, Vermont now, New Mexico. And I think Trump did very well to address this last night, because I think it is now incumbent upon Congress to take up the issue of saying we will not have and permit abortions past the 20-week period. Lindsey Graham's already introduced language on this front in the Senate, and I know that there are people in the House that are doing the same. It's time that we actually take this issue and say we are not going to be in the company of China and North Korea and Vietnam. It is to our shame to be associated with them on this issue. And
you know, Richard, it crosses the line for a lot of people. You know, this is not about conception and when life begins. This is about babies, and it seems like Democrats have kind of lost their mind if this is the hill that they're willing to kill and die on.
Well, Ned is right on this point that we shouldn't be having this. This is not a debate that we should be having. And if you read the Virginia bill, which I've read, it doesn't talk about infanticide at all. What the bill actually talks about, and
and why was Ralph Northam speaking in those terms?
Well, listen, I was getting ready to say that. I can't defend Ralph Northam or the delegate that wrote this particular bill, but actually read the bill. And what the bill actually says is if the life of the mother is in danger, i.e. the fetus is not viable, and you find it out at the beginning of the 3rd trimester, you can terminate the pregnancy. This has been on the law in Virginia for a very long time. But
they're altering the law, so instead of a physician
they're also including mental health.
Yeah,
and that is a
wait. I read the bill. Mental health was already on the. But mental health was in the law prior to this bill, for number one. And number two, the current law in Virginia, no, it's the truth, I read the bill. Number two, the current law in Virginia says 3 doctors have to sign off. They have to review the medical charts and truly make a determination if the mother's life is in danger or if the fetus is unviable, and then this particular termination can take place. There's no such thing as a 40-week abortion.
I just witnessed a friend of mine who had to deliver a baby when she was 7 months pregnant because they said the fetus was unviable because they couldn't detect a heartbeat, and they assumed the child is dead. The child is very much alive and well.
That's exactly...
Yeah, the child is alive and well. The child is a human being, a functioning human being. Do you know what I would do if someone hurt my newborn baby?
But Kennedy, you proved the point. You proved the point right there, though, Kennedy, that you cannot have an abortion that late in a pregnancy. All you can do is give a stillbirth. Period. If you talk to medical experts, there's no such. That is the truth.
Then why is Vermont, Richard,
and what's the
saying
difference?
that they are going to allow abortion up until the moment of birth? Vermont
you cannot have an abortion up until the moment of birth. That cannot happen. That is scientifically impossible.
The fact that
like the baby can't be crowning and you're like, oh, I'm going to abort the baby.
In the 3rd trimester?
I mean, that's what they're talking about, Richard. I mean, that's some of the language that they're using about terminating the pregnancy.
The bill is very specific around the bill. that is the language that the governor used, and I think that language is very inappropriate, and it's not congruent or concurrent with what the bill says or what the bill was trying to do that's tabled currently in the Virginia House of Delegates.
Yeah,
but what the bill actually says and what the bill actually does.
We really have to look inside ourselves and ask if this is the best way and to function as a society, because I think killing viable babies.
Sad commentary.
Well, I think we're not talking about killing viable babies. I think that's the distinction I'm trying to make here. We're talking about where the life of the mother is in danger or the fetus is unviable.
And that is also not okay. Gentlemen, you have to come to New York. We're going to read the bill. We're going to have the debate. We're all coming back to New York. We're going to party. Thank you both for being here.